Welcome to kindness in real life. What if a single moment could change everything? A chance encounter at the airport forces John to confront the painful past he abandoned, igniting a journey of redemption and the hope of rebuilding the family he lost. A quest for forgiveness, healing, and the courage to mend broken bonds. John stepped off the plane with a heaviness in his step, each movement in the bustling terminal a reminder of the years that had slipped by. His expensive suit and polished shoes contrasted starkly with the weariness in his eyes. New York's luxury had once been his dream, but now, amid the endless arrivals and departures at JFK, that dream felt empty. Lost in thought, John barely registered the announcements over the clamor of rolling suitcases and chatter. He was deep in memories of boardroom battles and the glittering lights of his high-rise office. Luxuries he had earned by chasing success at any cost. But today, as he navigated the crowded arrival hall, something unexpected made his heart skip a beat. There, emerging from the throng of travelers, was Sarah, the woman he had left behind 18 years ago. Her familiar silhouette, framed by the harsh airport lights, stirred a torrent of memories. The dreams they once shared, the promises broken, and the quiet, desperate pleas he had ignored. And beside her, a young woman with strikingly familiar features moved confidently through the crowd, a mirror image of himself that sent shock and disbelief coursing through him. For a long, agonizing moment, John froze. His eyes locked onto Sarah's face, which bore the lines of hardship and determination, and then drifted to the young woman whose eyes, dark and intense, mirrored his own. The resemblance was uncanny, a spitting image of the man he once was, or perhaps a ghost from a life he had long tried to forget. "John," Sarah's voice, soft and laden with both longing and sorrow, sliced through the din. It was as if the sound of her name was a lifeline from a past he had abandoned. John's throat tightened. "Sarah," he managed, his voice cracking with regret. He took a tentative step forward, his eyes never leaving the pair as they slowly moved away into the crowd. A storm of emotions raged inside him, regret, guilt, and a desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, he could still make things right. His mind raced back to the day he'd left New York, to the promise he'd made to himself that wealth and success would bring him freedom. Instead, it had only isolated him, leaving him haunted by the memory of the life he'd once known. Determined, John approached a nearby security guard, his voice trembling as he described the two figures. "Excuse me, have you seen a woman named Sarah? She's about 50, with soft eyes and a look of quiet resolve. And a young woman who she looks exactly like me?" He paused, uncertainty lacing his words. "I think they might be together." The guard's sympathetic expression softened his own confusion. "I'm sorry, sir, but the airport is too busy right now. I can't track someone without more details." John's heart sank as he thanked the guard and scanned the sea of faces again. Every unfamiliar face seemed to whisper, "She's gone." But he couldn't let her vanish into the tide of time. With trembling resolve, John pushed deeper into the crowd, following the direction in which Sarah and the young woman had disappeared. Minutes later, John found a quiet corner near the baggage claim and sank into a worn bench, his thoughts swirling like the echoes of long-forgotten promises. He remembered the day he had tearfully told Sarah he was leaving, chasing a life of luxury and success in New York. She had begged him to stay, her voice breaking with desperation, while he, blinded by ambition, had walked away, convinced that fortune would fill the void he'd left behind. Now, the memories came crashing back with brutal clarity. Sarah had been left alone to raise their daughter, Emily, and the young woman standing before him, who looked every bit his image, could only be a painful reminder of the family he had lost. Regret gnawed at him. "What have I done?" he murmured to himself, his voice barely audible over the hum of the terminal. Unable to sit in silence any longer, John gathered his resolve and decided he needed help. "I must find them," he whispered, his determination igniting despite the weight of his guilt. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number, not quite sure what he hoped to hear on the other end. After a few tense rings, a calm voice answered. "This is Detective Reynolds. Detective Reynolds, my name is John Matthews. I, I need help locating a woman named Sarah and her daughter, Emily, John said, his voice shaking with urgency and regret. They're at JFK Airport. I just saw them. The detective's tone was professional. I'll do my best to trace them, Mr. Matthews. Please stay where you are and keep your phone on. The line clicked off, and John felt a tiny glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, he could find a way back to the family he had abandoned. As he waited, memories of his past with Sarah surged like tidal waves. They had once shared dreams of building a life together, simple yet filled with love, ambition, and the promise of a future unburdened by regrets. John recalled the bittersweet farewell, the tearful goodbye that had echoed in the quiet of their small home. He remembered her pleading eyes and the desperate hope in her voice as she implored him not to leave. But he had been selfish, chasing success and power, leaving behind the one thing that truly mattered. The loudspeaker overhead began to announce arrivals, and John's eyes scanned the crowd once more, each face a painful reminder of the past. As he sat in that crowded terminal, time seemed to collapse around him, each moment a blend of regret and a desperate need for redemption. At last, his phone buzzed with a new message, a lead from the detective. Mr. Matthews, we have a tip. Sarah was seen exiting Terminal B at 2:15. Proceed with caution. John's heart pounded as he rose, stepping into the bustling corridor with renewed urgency. Every stride felt weighted by the years of absence, and every heartbeat reminded him of the promise he was about to attempt to keep, a promise to reclaim the love and trust he had shattered. In that charged moment, John muttered to himself, "I'm coming, Sarah. I'm here to make things right." And with that, he plunged back into the crowd, determined to face the consequences of his past and finally reunite with the family he had once so carelessly left behind. John stood at the edge of the bustling arrival hall, his heart still pounding from the shock of seeing Sarah and that uncanny young woman vanish into the crowd. Every face around him seemed to blur as memories of lost time and broken promises surged back. He clutched his phone tightly, the weight of his past pressing down on him like never before. Determination mingled with despair as he recalled the farewell, tears, desperate pleas, and his own selfish retreat to New York. Now, with the revelation that the young woman was his daughter, Emily, everything he had built in pursuit of luxury and success felt hollow. Frantically, John approached a nearby security desk. His voice wavered as he spoke. "Excuse me, sir. Have you seen a woman named Sarah, about 50, with tired eyes, and a young woman who looks just like me?" He paused, his gaze darting over the sea of travelers. "I believe they were here a few minutes ago, exiting Terminal B." The security guard, clearly overwhelmed by the chaos of the busy terminal, shook his head apologetically. "I'm sorry, sir. It's too busy here. I can't confirm without more details." John's frustration mounted, but he forced himself to breathe. "Please, I need to find them," he pleaded, his voice cracking under the pressure. With nothing else to go on, he sank onto a cold bench near baggage claim, lost in the swirling storm of regret and determination. Minutes later, his phone buzzed. A text from Detective Reynolds, the private investigator he'd hastily hired after that gut-wrenching moment. "Mr. Matthews, we have a tip. Sarah was last seen exiting Terminal B at 2:15. Stay where you are, and I'll update you shortly." John's heart leaped. "Thank you," he muttered, almost inaudibly, as he scanned the departing crowd with renewed urgency. Every unfamiliar face was now a potential clue, each step a promise to undo the mistakes of his past. The detective's call came soon after. "John, this is Reynolds. I'm following up on your case. I need you to describe Sarah to me again," he said, his tone measured and professional. John cleared his throat and began. "Sarah is about 50, with soft eyes and a look of quiet resilience. Even after all these years, there's a trace of the woman I loved, the warmth, despite the hardship. And Emily, she's young, probably in her early 20s, with features that mirror mine almost exactly. I can't believe it. I never imagined she'd grow up without me." His voice broke with the raw emotion of decades lost. I understand, Mr. Matthews, Detective Reynolds replied. I'm going to comb through the records and speak with some contacts who knew her back then. It might take some time, but I promise I'll keep you updated. John ended the call, his mind swirling with regret and a newfound resolve. Determined to retrace his steps, he decided to revisit places that once held meaning for Sarah and him. A park where they had once strolled together, the old neighborhood cafe, even the small house where they had shared dreams. Each location was a painful reminder of what he had sacrificed and what he had lost. That evening, John drove through familiar streets of the town he had long abandoned. The park where Sarah used to laugh with him on sunny afternoons now appeared desolate under the weight of his memory. He parked his car by a weathered bench and sat in silence, the cool night air stirring long-forgotten whispers of a simpler time. I'm coming back, Sarah, he whispered to himself. I have to fix this. I have to be there for you and for Emily. Just then, his phone rang. It was Detective Reynolds again. John, I've spoken with an old friend of Sarah's, the detective said. She mentioned that Sarah moved to a nearby neighborhood a few years ago, trying to start a new life after you left. And she also mentioned that Emily has been facing serious health issues. The words hit John like a physical blow. Health issues, he repeated, his voice trembling with fear and remorse. What kind of issues? I don't have all the details yet, Reynolds replied, but I'm digging deeper. In the meantime, I advise you to prepare yourself. This search may be more complicated than you expect. John's mind raced with visions of the daughter he never knew, struggling alone while he reveled in his empty successes. The stark contrast between the glamour of New York and the harsh reality Sarah must have endured filled him with dread. Yet, in that same moment, a flicker of hope ignited. Perhaps this was his long overdue chance to right the wrongs of the past. That night, John couldn't sleep. He replayed every conversation, every moment of that fateful day at the airport. He remembered Sarah's tearful eyes, the way her voice trembled as she called his name, and the bitter sound of Emily's accusation. You left us, Dad. The words echoed relentlessly in his mind. In a desperate bid for redemption, John decided to visit one more place, the old house where he and Sarah once planned a future together. The drive, there was a blur of memories and regrets. He parked outside the dilapidated structure, its peeling paint and overgrown yard a stark reminder of the life he had abandoned. Stepping out of his car, John took a deep breath and walked up the familiar, creaking steps. Inside, the house was cloaked in shadows, filled with the scent of nostalgia and sorrow. As he moved from room to room, each creaking floorboard whispered the echoes of a past he could never reclaim. In the living room, he found an old photo album on a dusty table. Flipping through the pages, he saw images of younger Sarah, radiant, full of hope, and pictures of himself, dreaming of a future that once seemed so certain. A pang of guilt and longing surged through him. What have I done? He murmured, the weight of his abandonment crushing him all over again. At that moment, his phone buzzed once more. Another message from Detective Reynolds. John, I've got a promising lead. Sarah's current address is in Maplewood. You might want to head there soon. With his heart hammering in his chest, John knew that this was his chance. Maplewood. He remembered vaguely. It was a quieter neighborhood where Sarah might have found solace after years of struggle. With renewed determination, he climbed back into his car and set off into the night, every mile a step toward the family he had lost. As he drove, the neon lights of New York faded behind him, replaced by the gentle glow of suburban streets. John's mind raced with plans of reconciliation, the overwhelming need to right his wrongs. I will find you, Sarah, and I'll do whatever it takes to make amends, he whispered to himself, his voice resolute despite the fear that knotted his stomach. John arrived in Maplewood as dawn was breaking, the sky streaked with soft hues of pink and orange, a promise of new beginnings. He parked in front of a modest house that felt both familiar and strange. With a trembling hand, he pressed the doorbell. The sound echoed in the quiet neighborhood, and every second felt like an eternity. Moments later, the door opened slowly. There, framed by the soft light of morning, stood Sarah, her eyes wide with surprise, fear, and something John hadn't dared to hope for: forgiveness. "John," she breathed, her voice trembling. "I'm here, Sarah," he said, stepping forward with tentative hope. "I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness, but I need to try. I need to make this right, for you and for Emily." For a long moment, silence reigned as the weight of their shared past hung in the air. In that charged, fragile moment, John knew that the road to redemption would be long and fraught with pain, but it was a journey he was finally ready to take. John's search had taken him deep into the heart of memories he had long tried to bury. With Detective Reynolds' tip echoing in his ear, he drove through the quiet suburban streets of Maplewood, each mile stirring a painful mix of hope and dread. Every familiar landmark, the little park where he once strolled with Sarah, the old cafe they frequented, even the faded billboard from his youth, reminded him of a time when life was simpler and love had been unburdened by ambition. A modest townhouse on a tree-lined street, John parked his car and stepped out into the cool evening air. He clutched his phone, his heart pounding as he recalled the detective's message. Sarah was seen in this neighborhood a few years ago, trying to rebuild her life. With hesitant steps, he walked up to the door and rang the bell. Each ring echoed in his ears like a heartbeat of guilt and longing. After what felt like an eternity, the door creaked open. There, in the half-light of a fading day, stood Sarah. Her eyes, once filled with hopeful warmth, now shimmered with guarded pain and exhaustion. For a moment, time slowed as their gazes locked. "John," Sarah's voice wavered, barely a whisper. "Sarah," John managed his throat tight. I'm sorry. I never meant to leave you alone." His words trembled with regret. "I know I've hurt you, and Emily. I want to make things right." Before Sarah could respond, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed from the hallway. A young woman emerged, Emily. Her features were unmistakably his, a mirror of a younger version of John, but her eyes were hardened by years of abandonment and struggle. "Dad," Emily said flatly, her voice laced with a bitter edge that cut John to the core. "You finally show up after all these years." John's heart sank. "Emily, he began, but she stepped back, her arms crossed tightly. "Why now?" she demanded, her tone icy. "Where were you when we needed you?" Sarah stepped in, her voice firm yet pained. "John, please let her speak." John's eyes pleaded for forgiveness, but Emily's gaze was unyielding. "I spent my whole life wondering if you'd ever come back. And now that you have, it feels like you expect everything to just be okay, like you can fix us with a few apologies." John swallowed hard, his voice breaking as he tried to find the right words. I was lost, chasing a dream that blinded me to what was truly important. I made mistakes, terrible mistakes. But I'm here now. I want to be a part of your life, Emily. I want to help mend what I shattered." Emily's eyes flashed with anger and sorrow. "Help? You think is simple. I'm sorry can undo 18 years of abandonment? I can't just forget that you left us." Tears welled in John's eyes as he turned to Sarah. "I know it won't be easy. I know nothing I say can erase the past, but I'm ready to do whatever it takes. I've hired a detective. I've been searching for you. I needed to see you both to know that maybe I can still make amends." Sarah's gaze softened for a moment as she observed her daughter's pain and John's remorse. "John," she said quietly, "we've survived all these years, but the wounds are still fresh. You left us with so much to bear." John nodded, his voice choked with emotion. "I understand. I was selfish. I thought success in New York would fill the void inside me, but all it did was deepen my emptiness." He took a step closer to Emily, his tone earnest. "Emily, I want to be here for you, if you'll let me. I'm willing to listen, to learn, and to work to earn your trust back. I know it might be too late, but I can't live with the thought of never trying to fix what I broke." For a long, heavy moment, silence reigned. The bustling sounds of the outside world seemed distant, and all that mattered was the fragile space between them, a space filled with raw, unspoken truth. Finally, Emily's eyes softened just a fraction as she whispered, "You left us, Dad. I was angry, so angry that I built walls around my heart. But maybe there's a chance to try again." Her voice wavered, a blend of hurt and cautious hope. John's relief was palpable, though tempered by the weight of years lost. "I'll do anything," he vowed softly, "to be the father you deserve, to support you, and to honor the love you and Mom once believed in." At that moment, Sarah stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on both their shoulders. "We can't change what happened," she said, her voice both tender and firm, "but maybe we can start building something new, one day at a time. Trust must be earned, and I'm willing to try if you are." The three of them stood there, the night around them heavy with the promise of difficult reconciliation. John's mind raced with memories of nights spent in lonely luxury, of missed opportunities, of the ache of an absent father, and the weight of regret mingled with a fragile hope that perhaps redemption was still possible. Outside, the city lights flickered softly, and as John, Sarah, and Emily began to talk in earnest, the harsh lines of the past started to blur. They spoke of the dreams they once shared, the sacrifices made, and the possibility of forging a new future together. John listened as Emily recounted the struggle she'd endured, the bitterness of abandonment that had colored her youth. He offered apologies, not in grand gestures, but in quiet, heartfelt promises. "I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere," John said firmly, his eyes pleading for a second chance. "Let me help heal the wounds I caused. Let me show you that I've learned what truly matters." Emily's guarded expression slowly began to soften as tears welled in her eyes. "I don't know if I'm ready to forgive you completely," she admitted, her voice trembling. "But maybe if you prove it over time, I can try to trust you again." In that moment, beneath the harsh glare of fluorescent lights in a hospital waiting room, a tentative bridge began to form. A bridge built on sorrow, regret, and the faint promise of reconciliation. John knew that the road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges. Yet, with each word, each tear, and each small step toward understanding, a new possibility emerged. A future where love and responsibility could finally mend the fractured pieces of a once broken family. The weeks following that fraught reunion were a blur of raw emotions, whispered apologies, and tentative attempts at reconciliation. John spent long, sleepless nights wrestling with memories and regrets. Every day, the echo of his abandonment haunted him like a relentless drumbeat, urging him to prove that he wasn't the same man who had once left Sarah and Emily behind. Now, with Sarah's cautious forgiveness and Emily's guarded resentment still hanging in the air, John realized that words alone would never be enough. Action was required. One rainy afternoon, in the cramped living room of Sarah's modest Maplewood home, John found himself seated across from Sarah and Emily at a small, battered table. The rain tapped steadily on the window, a soft reminder of the passage of time. Sarah's eyes, red-rimmed from both tears and exhaustion, met his with a look that mixed sorrow and a sliver of hope. "John," Sarah began, her voice trembling slightly, "we agreed that rebuilding trust wouldn't be easy. It has to start with consistency. Show us every day that you're here to stay." John reached across the table, his hand hovering hesitantly before resting on hers. "I know," he said, his tone heavy with remorse. "I've spent 18 years chasing my own ambitions, and I lost the most important things in my life. I'm not asking for forgiveness overnight, but I promise I'll do everything I can to make up for my mistakes." Emily sat quietly at the far end of the table, her eyes distant. After a long pause, she finally spoke, her voice edged with bitterness. "I remember when you left, Dad. I remember the nights I cried, wondering if you'd ever come back. And now you say you're here to fix things? How do I know this isn't just another empty promise?" John's heart pounded painfully at her words. "Emily, I know I don't deserve your trust, but I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. I want to be there for you, to listen, to learn, and to prove that I can change." His voice cracked as he continued. "I've hired a private detective, and I've been visiting every place that once meant something to us. Our old park, the cafe where we used to meet. I need to understand the life you've lived in my absence." Sarah squeezed his hand gently. "You must understand, John, that your absence left deep scars. I had to be both mother and father to Emily, and every day was a struggle. It wasn't just about money or success. It was about survival. John bowed his head. I know, and I'm sorry. I was so blinded by ambition that I forgot what truly mattered. I see that now. His eyes searched Emily's, pleading for a sign of softening. Please, let me help. Let me share in your struggles and celebrate your victories. I want to be part of your world, not just as a regretful memory, but as someone who actively makes things better. Emily's gaze wavered between her mother and her father. I'm not ready to let go of the hurt, she admitted in a quiet, almost inaudible voice. Every day, I battle with the feeling of abandonment, and I'm tired of pretending that it doesn't hurt. She looked up sharply. You think you can fix everything with promises? It isn't that simple. John's eyes filled with tears. I don't expect to fix everything overnight, he said softly, but I want to start with small steps. I want to be there when you're sick, to help with your homework, to attend your school events, even if it means slowly earning back your trust. His voice was laden with sincerity and a raw, desperate need to atone for years of neglect. A heavy silence fell over the room. Outside, the rain continued its steady patter, as if marking the passage of time in slow, deliberate beats. Sarah, ever the anchor, spoke again. Maybe we should start with a fresh beginning, a new tradition. How about we spend some time together, as a family, without distractions? No phones, no work, just us. Emily looked at her mother, then back at John. I don't know, she said, her voice wavering. I'm not sure I can handle it all at once. I need space to figure out if I can trust you again. John nodded, swallowing hard. I understand, Emily. I'll be patient. I'll show you every day that I'm committed to making things right. I'm here to listen, whatever you have to say, whenever you're ready. That evening, after the difficult conversation, John sat alone in a small room at a community center, a place Sarah had suggested as a neutral ground for future family gatherings. The center buzzed with activity, children laughing, elderly folks chatting over chess, and a gentle melody playing on a worn-out piano in the corner. It was a stark contrast to the sterile tension of a living room just moments before. John took out an old photograph from his wallet, a faded picture of him and Sarah, smiling under a summer sky, full of hope and youthful promises. He traced the outline of Sarah's face with trembling fingers, feeling the crushing weight of his own regrets. I have to be better, he whispered to himself, not for the sake of success or redemption, but for them. The next day, John made a decision. He contacted a local charity that specialized in family counseling and community support. I need help, he told them over the phone, his voice resolute. I need to learn how to rebuild a family, how to be present when I've been absent for too long. The counselor's kind, steady tone reassured him that he wasn't alone on this difficult path. Over the following weeks, John began to attend therapy sessions, both individually and with Sarah. He learned to confront his own demons, the relentless pursuit of wealth that had blinded him to the love he once had. And slowly, painstakingly, he started to take responsibility for his past actions. With each session, he made small strides. A phone call to Emily to check in, a handwritten note left on the doorstep, a quiet dinner where he listened more than he spoke. Emily, though still guarded, began to notice these changes. At a school event a month later, John arrived, nervous yet determined. As he stood at the back of the auditorium, watching Emily receive an award for her academic achievements, his eyes brimmed with both pride and sorrow. Afterwards, as she walked off stage, he approached her hesitantly. Emily, he began, his voice soft and tentative, I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness, but I want to try, to be here for you, in every way I can. Emily looked at him, her face unreadable for a long moment. Finally, with a tremor in her voice, she said, I'm not ready yet, Dad. But maybe one day you'll earn my trust. John nodded, accepting the weight of her words. I'll keep trying every day, he promised. I won't stop until I've shown you that I'm truly here. As the family slowly began to rebuild their fragile bond, John knew that the road to redemption would be long and riddled with setbacks. But in that moment, Under the gentle glow of newfound hope and the echo of whispered promises, he took his first true step toward making amends, toward embracing the love and responsibility he had abandoned so long ago. If you enjoyed this chapter, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment letting us know where you're watching from. Stay tuned to Kindness in Real Life for more heartfelt stories of reconciliation, the struggle to mend broken bonds, and the enduring power of second chances. John's heart thundered as he stepped into the modest living room of Sarah's Maplewood home, a place that had become a reluctant refuge for a fractured family. The room was dimly lit by the fading light of late afternoon, shadows stretching across the worn carpet, mirroring the long, painful journey that lay before them. Sarah sat on an old, familiar sofa, her face etched with both sorrow and cautious hope. Across from her, Emily, still distant, eyes guarded with pain, stared out the window as if trying to escape the weight of the moment. John cleared his throat, his voice trembling. "Sarah, Emily, I know I've hurt you both in ways I can't even begin to describe. Every day, without you has been a reminder of how selfish I was." He paused, his gaze falling to his calloused hands. "I'm not here to make excuses. I'm here because I want to rebuild what I've broken." Emily's eyes snapped to his, her voice cold but trembling with emotion. "Rebuild? How do you plan on doing that, Dad? Do you think a few apologies can erase 18 years of abandonment?" Her words were sharp, each syllable cutting through the fragile silence. Sarah interjected softly, "John, you must understand. These years, I've fought to hold everything together. I've been raising Emily on my own, struggling every day, and I never stopped hoping you'd come back. But hope isn't enough to heal deep wounds." Her voice wavered between anger and a desperate longing for a lost past. John took a step forward, eyes pleading. "I hired a private detective. I traced every lead, revisited the places where we once shared dreams, and I've been in therapy, trying to understand my mistakes. I know words won't change the past, but I'm committed to showing you through actions that I'm here to stay. I want to be a part of your lives, truly, completely." Emily folded her arms, her tone bitter yet vulnerable. "You talk about actions, but all I see are promises. How can I trust that you won't just vanish again, leaving us with more pain?" Tears glistened in her eyes, though she quickly blinked them away. "I can't keep living in the shadow of your absence." The silence that followed was heavy. John's eyes filled with tears as he lowered his head. "I know, Emily. I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness easily. But every day, I wake up thinking of the mistakes I made and the life I stole from you both. I've lost so much. Even when I was chasing success, I lost the one thing that truly mattered. I want to make this right. I want to help you heal." Sarah reached out, placing a gentle hand on John's arm. "This isn't just about you, John. It's about all of us. Emily, I've tried to be strong, but I miss having you with us. The pain of being alone, of having to fight every day, it's been unbearable." Her eyes searched her daughter's face. "Maybe if we all try, we can start to mend what's been broken." Emily's voice softened slightly, though skepticism still laced every word. "I'm tired of empty promises, Dad. I'm tired of feeling like I'm not enough. I built walls so I wouldn't be hurt again. How do I know you'll be here when I need you?" John knelt down in front of her, his hands outstretched. "I can't change the past, but I can work every single day to be the father you deserve. Let me show you that I'm not just a ghost from your nightmares. I want to be with you through your struggles, your victories, every moment in between. I'll be here, not just with words, but with my every action." The tension in the room seemed to ease just a fraction as Emily's eyes filled with a mix of anger, hope, and a tentative yearning for reconnection. "I don't know if I can forgive you right away," she said in a soft, almost broken whisper. "But I'm willing to see if you mean what you say. I need time to trust you again." Sarah smiled sadly, relief mingled with lingering hurt. "That's all we ask, John. Healing takes time. We're not expecting miracles overnight. We just need to know that you're here for us now. No more disappearing, no more excuses." John nodded, his voice steadying as he made a promise. "I'm here. I will stay. I'm going to do everything I can to help Emily get the treatment she needs, and to be a constant presence in both your lives. I know I have a long road ahead, but I'm ready to walk it, step by painful step. As the three sat in that quiet living room, a tentative plan began to form. They agreed to meet regularly, to attend counseling sessions as a family, and to start rebuilding their trust with small, concrete actions. John would handle the urgent matters at his company from a distance, while dedicating his evenings to being present at home. He promised to attend every doctor's appointment, to help with homework, and to share meals together. Simple acts that, over time, might stitch together the frayed edges of their bond. That evening, after the meeting, John sat alone in his car outside the modest house, the weight of the conversation still heavy on his heart. The dark sky overhead seemed to mirror the uncertainty of what lay ahead. In the silence, he whispered to himself, "I will prove that I can be the father you both deserve. I won't let my past define our future." The resolve in his voice was fierce, a promise to fight against the shadows of regret and rebuild the love he had once abandoned. In the end, John's journey teaches us that no matter how deep our mistakes, the power of redemption and genuine love can pave the way for a new beginning. His painful quest to reconnect with Sarah and Emily reminds us that true success is measured not by wealth or status, but by our willingness to face our past, learn from it, and rebuild with compassion. Even when regret seems overwhelming, every day offers a fresh chance to mend broken bonds and restore hope. Let John's story inspire you to seek forgiveness, to value family above all, and to never give up on the possibility of change. If you believe that healing starts with taking responsibility and embracing second chances, please like this video, subscribe to Kindness in Real Life, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support helps us continue to share powerful stories of transformation and hope.